I spent time in the military, including an active duty tour to Iraq in 2005-2006. I know how hard it can be to transition from service to civilian life. One of the most challenging things for me was to go from having a clear sense of direction and purpose to not knowing what my next battle was. I know a lot of our nation's warriors feel the same. Today, I talk with my good friend Phil Randazzo about his 15-year mission to help our military members successfully transition into civilian life. I believe so much in what he and his organization are doing that I now sit on the board of advisors for American Dream U. Today, we talk about why transitioning out of the military is so challenging, what our military members should be doing prior to leaving service, how they can find a new battle to fight, and how we can support our nation's warriors.
You're a man of action. You live life to the fullest, embrace your fears, and boldly chart your own path. When life knocks you down, you get back up one more time, every time. You are not easily deterred or defeated. Rugged, resilient, strong. This is your life. This is who you are. This is who you will become. At the end of the day, and after all is said and done, you can call yourself a man.
Gentlemen, what is going on today? My name is Ryan Mickler, and I am the host and founder of this podcast, The Order of Man. I want to welcome you, whether you're new or have been listening in for 3 years, to the best show on the interwebs for becoming a better man. I am interviewing the world's most successful men, from warriors to athletes, New York Times bestselling authors, scholars, you name it. If they're doing good things, big things in their lives, I'm interviewing them. We're extracting their knowledge, and then we're delivering that straight to you through this podcast. So I want to welcome you to the show today. We need more men in this fight, guys. We need more men in this fight. It's amazing to me how much this has grown over the past 3 years. But as I'm always saying, we need to have more guys anxiously engaged in this battle of reclaiming what it means to be a better man. So if you would, I would ask that, number one, you would go ahead and share this show. Just share it with one person, two people, your brother, your dad, your colleagues, your coworkers, your friends, whoever that may be. And specifically this show, if you would share it with a member of the military. We're going to talk about military life. We're going to talk about transitioning into civilian life, which millions and millions of our soldiers and Marines and veterans are doing. And I want to make sure they have the information that I'm going to share. So make sure you share this episode, that you share this show. I would appreciate it if you did. Now, only a couple of quick announcements before we get into the meat of the discussion today. I want to talk with you about building a band of brothers. This is something that gets brought up in our Order of Man Facebook group all the time. And it is so, so important. I think one of the most helpful things in my life is building a band of brothers. This is a group of men who are dedicated and committed to growing their own lives and being successful in their own lives, but they also want to help you be successful in yours. And we've actually got 2 resources for building your band of brothers, because what I've noticed when I started this journey probably 9 years ago of becoming a better man, it was very difficult for me to find other men who wanted to do the same things that I did. So I just went out and created it. And that's what Order of Man is. And that's what we're doing here. So 2 quick resources that you are definitely going to want to check out. Number one is we've got our digital band of brothers, and this is called the Iron Council. This is a group of 360 men from all over the planet who are engaging in assignments and challenges. We're having some very, very focused conversations on the topic of building wealth and getting in better shape and overcoming loss and building businesses. I mean, you name it. If you want to have a discussion about it, we are having some of these conversations. And then, of course, and this is a big deal when it comes to building a band of brothers, we've got the accountability in place. And that accountability to yourself and to other men is really, I think, what separates guys who talk about wanting to improve their lives and the guys who actually do improve their lives. So if you feel like you're stagnant, you feel like you want something more out of life, whether that's increased health or money in the bank account or the new business, whatever it may be, the Iron Council may be a great resource for you. You can check it out and you can join us at orderofman.com/Iron Council. Now, the second resource that I wanted to share with you along the idea of building your band of brothers is our 3.5-day experience in the mountains of southern Utah. It's going to be held May 3rd through the 6th, 2018. And what I've noticed, we've done 2 of these now. What I've noticed is that the men who come to this event, who attend these events, are still maintaining contact long after these experiences are over. That's because they've been pushed, tested mentally, physically, emotionally together. They've gone through this. They've talked about their challenges and their struggles, and they've helped each other in a period of 3.5 days really forges a very, very powerful relationship that I didn't fully anticipate happening when I decided to launch the Uprising experiences. So if you want to connect with other men, whether that's digitally or locally, you want to find other men who are doing big things in their lives, and by default will naturally help you do big things in yours, then again, it's the two resources. It's the Iron Council, the digital band of brothers, orderofman.com/Iron Council. And then it's our 3.5-day experience. In fact, our first experience, we call ourselves the Terrible 20, and we all stay in contact because we went through that together. You can find out more about that May 3rd through the 6th, 2018 at orderofman.com/uprising, orderofman.com/uprising. So those are the two announcements I wanted to share with you today. I'm really anxious to get into this conversation. I can't even begin to describe how excited I am to introduce you to my friend, Phil Randazzo. Him and I met about a year ago through some mutual acquaintances, and since then we began working together with his organization, American Dream U. He's an extremely successful business owner working in the financial services industry, but more important than that is this 15-year journey that he's been on to help transition our nation's warriors. I can tell you that this is a man who has his heart in the right place. We've had plenty of conversations about that, and he's genuinely concerned with helping our veterans. He's been invited to the White House. He's testified in front of Congress on the behalf of veterans. He's been given a key to the city of Las Vegas, commissioned as a member of the Veterans Service Commission. So needless to say, he's committed to the work. And again, I couldn't be more proud to be part of his organization and call Phil a friend. Phil, what's going on, man? Thanks for joining me on the show today.
Hey, thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for some time. I was in the military, and I know a lot of guys that are listening to this podcast are or have been in the military. And I think there's some real challenges with transitioning from their service into civilian life. And that's what you guys are addressing. I was thinking about this even before we hit record on this podcast. We have a lot of people in common, and we know a lot of people mutually. And if there's one like underlying theme between who I know and who you know, it's you. You seem to be everywhere. So I'm excited to have you on the show, man.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, looking at your guest of speakers that you've had, it's just tremendous, and congratulations on all your success on that, Ryan.
So tell me a little bit about American Dream U, which is your organization. You've been going for quite a while now, but really at the end of the day, the goal is to help these guys transition and gals to transition into civilian life. But tell me a little bit about what the mission is.
You know, it started back in 2003, a week after the Iraq war started. I never served, Ryan. I looked into joining after 9/11 and just was medically disqualified. And so, I mean, you were there, you were in Iraq. I mean, it was a whole bunch of young men and women serving our country. I felt like there wasn't a whole bunch of, I don't want to say support, but I thought as civilians we could do more. And the program, after about 10 years, we helped the wounded their families. We helped build Fisher homes, and we were early on contributors to the Wounded Warrior Project. And then 5 years ago, I asked a friend of mine who was a colonel at the time. Now he's a 4-star general. I said, what can we do to help support? And he says, you know, for some, the transition can be difficult. And so I had the idea just to bring entrepreneurs and different thinkers to military bases and have them share with what's possible next. And that's kind of how it evolved. And that was about 85 events ago. And we've had 17,000 attendees, and honored to have you speak as well at one of the events.
I mean, it was such a cool experience. I actually went out to Fort Sill, which is where I did basic training. And it was really nice to go under there under a different set of circumstances than I did before. But it's pretty amazing when I step back and take a look at what you guys are doing. What do you see as being some common threads or themes that our soldiers and Marines are having a difficult time when it comes to transitioning?
The thing we hear most is, I'm only an infantry guy, or I only did this, or I only did that, and I don't have a college degree, and so I'm not qualified to do anything. And we just kind of, as civilians, we kind of look at them and go, do you guys work well with teams? Do you show up on time? You put the mission first, but they're surrounded by a whole bunch of other Marines and soldiers who all do that, right? Getting it through kind of a new mindset that they have what this country is looking for, Ryan. They're looking for leadership. And unfortunately, I know this is what you're all about. This country, in my opinion, is lacking leadership. And I think this generation of Iraq and Afghan vets can provide that leadership. So we try to instill that, yes, they have the abilities to go out and lead, whether it's a small organization or a large organization. So if I could just say anything to anyone listening to this, that might be in the process of transitioning is that you guys have what civilians and what organizations are looking for.
It seems to me like a bit of confirmation bias in a way. I mean, they look around, for example, and see everybody works well as a team. Everybody's disciplined because that's the requirement and that's what is expected of you. And that's what you see around. And yet I think that's probably not as common in the civilian sector at all from my experience. And that's a very translatable skill.
I'm fortunate I own at least a handful of businesses. One of my companies has over 300 employees. Ryan, I can't get people to show up on time.
Yeah.
And when they do show up on time, they're on social media, they're waiting for everyone else to do the work. So it's frustrating as a civilian business owner. So that's why I try to hire as many veterans as possible.
Do you see that there's certain areas of the civilian sector, whether that's, construction or starting businesses? I mean, where are these people thriving the most in your experience?
Again, after years of doing this and 15,000, 17,000 plus, a lot of soldiers, Marines, et cetera, love to use their hands. They love to work. They love to be outdoors. I think you're one of them, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. And so some of them are thriving doing just that. Carpenters, plumbers, leading outdoor adventures, those type of things. And others are super tech savvy where, the military are leaders when it comes to everything from drones to communications. And some of them just thrive coding or leading. And then, as you know, and you've interviewed a lot of them, everyone from Daniel at Grunt Style to Griff at Combat Flip Flops to all these amazing veteran-owned businesses, the military teaches, whether they know it or not, leadership to become an amazing entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's true. A lot of the people that I talk with who are business owners have some military service in their background. Do you find that the people that are transitioning out of the military majority of them are retiring, or are they just finishing up their enlistment contract? What do you see?
Yeah, I mean, it's like 90% are those that are just finishing up their contract. They're not retiring. So they don't have that kind of retirement, salary to kind of for a runway. So yeah, the majority of them we're seeing are 1 or 2 term guys, mid-20s. Typically they don't have a college education and they feel like, or maybe they're told that they need that college degree. They need that certificate, which in my opinion, I'm a college graduate, but I don't think that paper's worth as much as it used to be worth.
Sure.
And so they're struggling with that. So their first instinct is to go back to school, and get a degree. And we hear it all the time around like, yeah, I want to start my own business. So I'm going to get a business degree. I'm like, what classes are you taking now? They're like, well, the history of the Beatles. And I'm taking this. And I'm like, dude, you're going to get so frustrated before you hit the classes that you think might help you start a business. You got to just, go do it on your own.
Yeah. And what's really fascinating about this is there was a video that just came out recently, and I don't know if you've seen this video or heard it or not, but this school teacher belittling a student, this is in the LA area, I think, belittling a student who had a Marines sweatshirt on and basically talking about how the military is uneducated and the lowest of the low. And although there may be some truth to that when it comes to a degree, I think that the military is not a last resort option. I think these are intelligent people using an opportunity to get ahead and to grow and to have some experiences. It's amazing what I hear from some of this, but I don't think that's a general consensus. It's just amazing some of the garbage and nonsense that I hear from some of these very few people.
Yeah. And, I've said this, and I have 3 kids. They all graduated from college. They all played sports, and I've said this in front of them, and I've kind of got them upset. I'd rather hire, a 1-term Marine or 1-term soldier, airman, sailor with the experience they've had versus someone with a liberal arts degree in college. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer when it comes to that. So I'll have to check out that video, but it sounds disgusting to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it really is. So what do you see as being the biggest challenge then? I mean, we've talked a little bit about the transition can be difficult, and of course, maybe they don't think they're qualified, and so they immediately run into college, which I don't think in and of itself is necessarily bad as long as it has purpose to it. But what are some of the biggest hurdles when transitioning out of the military?
So what we've heard, and I make calls every week, is that, you leave this tribe of brothers and sisters, and you have this identity that comes with the uniform and serving the nation. And when you take that uniform off, it's no different than we've had a lot of professional athletes come speak at our program. That identity stays in the locker room or stays back at Fort Sill or wherever you served. And so that's what we're seeing as the most difficult part of the transition, is missing that tribe and that identity and that mission driven. So how do we recreate that? That's what we're working on right now, Ryan. And you were on a call last week because you're part of the leadership team here. It's a big challenge for us to get connected with these men and women and let them know it's very, very important to build that community and that tribe once you get out. So, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because I know you left and a big part of you serving was your identity there.
Well, and it's really interesting you bring that up, because if you ask people to tell you a little bit about them, usually what they'll say is they'll tell you their job, right? And they use that as the identifier, the main identifier for who they are. And that might be what you do, but I don't really think that's an indicator of who you are, because there's a lot of skills, like you said earlier, that can transition, whether it's discipline, teamwork, commitment, dedication, that can translate perfectly into so many different areas. You are so much more than just your job or your title. And I can see that being a very real challenge. How do you suggest a soldier or Marine build the type of tribe or support unit that you're talking about? I know it's a challenge because these guys are bouncing around every 2 to 5 years, and that can be a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, that's a big problem, Ryan, right? I wrote a book called Mission Next and interviewed over 100 amazing, successful veterans, and a good portion of them left where they were from because they knew the handful of people they hung out with weren't good influences. So to leave the military, wherever you bounce around, and go home and then hang out with a handful of people that maybe you shouldn't be hanging out with could be trouble.
Absolutely.
And we've heard that. So the challenge is finding the right organization, tribe, whether some key people. And that also may mean that you might have to kind of disconnect yourself from those friends, if you go home, and some family members, honestly. I mean, I have some family members who are just a drag, right? Negative. And being around that is not helpful. So build some civilian relationships while you're in the military. There are people like me, a lot of other people that want to develop relationships and connections. And so one of the things that we teach, and you're a master at this, is connections and making connections and building relationships outside the military. So that would be the biggest thing. But it's hard. I mean, I'm struggling with it as a civilian.
Sure.
I have very few. And I don't want to get into all my issues and problems because I got a ton of them. We don't have time on this show.
Yeah,
but
we go for hours, right?
We go for hours. Yeah. I mean, it's an identity thing, and it's super difficult to do. And that's a big part of what I'm doing and what we're trying to teach, and what I share at the bases is building that community outside the gates.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, obviously your network is critical. It's so important. And as I improve my network, every other metric of my life is enhanced and improved. It's pretty fascinating. One of the things that I was thinking about is when I was in Iraq, again, that was 2005, 2006, I actually took some of my study materials, so my insurance and investment exam study materials, to Iraq on a leave. So I brought them back to Iraq, and in my downtime, I would study. And I actually took a couple of college classes and then came back and passed those exams. But it was really interesting because I saw a lot of guys who were doing marathons of the TV show 24, or all of their time was just spent, who knows what they were doing in their downtime. What would you say about that, and how soldiers and Marines can use their time effectively in service so that they're more prepared when they transition?
You said that perfectly. So we go to these bases, we're like, all right, what are you guys doing to prepare to leave? We don't have time, sir. And I'm like, okay, well, what'd you do this weekend? Well, we did some Xbox 360, we hit Game of Thrones. I'm like,
yep.
And you saw it, right? You serve with guys who on their
100%.
downtime were doing, right. So I'm like, just carve out 2 hours a week, just 2 hours a week, plus your net time, your no extra time when you're commuting to work, to the base, when you're working out, and download a podcast or listen to a TED Talk or an Audible book or something. We all have this extra time, and just try it for 2 hours and see what it does. And I mean, I can just tell you right now, if people listen to a handful of your podcasts, it's going to get them hooked on becoming self-educated. I mean, I don't know if I shared my grades when you spoke at Fort Sill.
You did. Yeah, you brought those up on the screen, actually.
Oh, brutal. I mean, my senior year, I had a 1.8. I couldn't play sports. I mean, I went to high school to play sports. I didn't know why they had classrooms in high school. I mean, to me, it was ridiculous. It was all about sports. Same thing. I couldn't get into college. I went to junior college, and somehow I made it to college. So traditional learning wasn't for me. But boy, I am hooked on learning. And again, I'm not telling someone not to have some downtime and watch some TV. That's all great, but just carve out a few hours a week. And I mean, look, I mean, you hit the ground running when you came back and you passed all these tests and courses, and it set yourself up for a business. And there's no reason why all different branches of service and spouses couldn't improve their life by doing that.
Obviously, it's more difficult because you have to exert yourself and you have to have some initiative to be able to figure out what it is you need to do. But I think the military can be such a powerful tool to be able to grow and expand while you're in service, but then also that you can utilize that time effectively to really set yourself up in a very powerful way moving into your civilian life.
Yeah, and let me just put this out there. So, I mentioned my grades, and, I was most likely in high school to do absolutely nothing, right? I don't know if I was like the gas station attendant guy or the bus, the dishwasher, whatever the case may be. So don't look at your grades and what other people think of you in terms of your education. Just like this teacher ripped this kid with a Marine t-shirt on. Don't look at that, because you and I both know people that were smarter than, but they're more successful. They have better relationships. They're happier than us. Don't look at your skills in terms of your education as a way to move forward, because I don't even know if I just said that right. But what I'm saying is I'm not that smart of a guy, and I've done okay. And you and I know a whole bunch of people that aren't smart, but just have that determination and that focus to push through and get it done.
I think if there's one trait that you need to possess of the two, I mean, both would be nice, of course, but if you had to choose one, I would say resilience, toughness, fortitude, grit, the ability to figure things out, and your level of education, formal education, smarts isn't really as important as just grinding your way through things at times.
Yeah. We mentioned, Daniel from Grunt Style. He's had one college credit, and that was, I think, a health class, because he had in the Army, he took first aid, right? And he talks about GTS, and that's how he started Grunt Style. It's Google that and then the S word. That's how he started. That's how he learned. And he'd be the first to tell you, I just built a team around me to help me succeed. So let me just say something about being a father and a dad, and just a mistake. And I've shared this with people. So if I can just rip just for about 30 seconds.
Of course, yeah.
I've been married 26 years. A few years back, my wife literally came to me and said, 90% of the time, Phil, you're an amazing husband and amazing dad. But 2% of the time, you're just a dick. You get angry. I have no idea why you get angry. You get frustrated, all this kind of stuff. And what happened was I had a whole bunch of anger and resentment towards my family. It's horrible to say, because I was working 10, 12 hours a day doing something I hated, my day job. Now, I don't get paid for American Dream You. I love it. I wish I could do it 100 hours a week. But I almost lost my marriage over not being authentic to myself and just being a jerk, right? I mean, we make all these decisions all day. I'd get home and my wife would be like, hey, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, whatever you want to make me. No, I want to make you something special. Do you want chicken? I'm like, I don't care, whatever you want. Like the third time, I'm like, just effing feed me, right? I can't make another decision today. And I remember saying this at a base, and the guy in the front row was like, amen, brother, you're in my kitchen, right? And so as men, we need to be conscious of this. And I know, and again, I'm not a veteran, but I know those that are listening that have gone through this, just be conscious about it and be authentic to yourself. And I was chasing the wrong things, Ryan. I was chasing financial success. I was trying to be as successful as people that I hung around with. It was a losing game. And it got me frustrated, angry, and resentful.
I mean, I've been there too. I'm in the same boat, and my wife can attest to that as well. It's interesting you bring this up, because with Order of Man, we've been going at this for 3 years now, and I've never been more satisfied and content and fulfilled in my life. But I think that's a testament to what you're saying, is that you're finding something that you're passionate about, that you're enthusiastic about, that you're engaged in, that really fires you up. So I guess my follow-up question to that would be, how does a transitioning military member begin to find what that would actually look like for them?
Yeah, that's the difficult part, because I'm still actually searching myself. But what I've discovered is, first off, there's very little correlation between making a ton of money and happiness. And you and I both know this. We know people that are super successful financially and they're miserable, they're not healthy, all that kind of stuff. So I'm actually going back to when I was a child and looking at what got me excited, what got me interested, what could attract my focus, that I could actually focus on stuff. And that's where I started. And so, I ask a lot of soldiers, I'm like, what do you do on the weekends? Oh, I build apps, or, I work on my car, all these type of things, and look for areas that you lose track of time and just see where you can make some money from those type of things. And again, it's tough because a lot of these, men and women getting out have families and they have to support them. And the financial stress of just having to pay bills is difficult. And it might take 3 or 4 different jobs, Ryan, to figure out where you fit in and where your tribe is, or a dozen different jobs. But try not to get frustrated with that discovery process, because like you and I both know, we're not young kids. You're a young kid actually, but it's a process to figure this stuff out. And I don't know if you have any ideas for the listeners on that, because I know you're in your zone.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point. It's like, what are you doing when you lose track of time? Another question that I've asked before is, what are people asking you for advice on? They recognize something in you that you may not even recognize in yourself. And I think when you start to answer these type of questions, you can see some common themes. But you bring up a really good point too of starting a business even while you're in the service. And I don't know if there's any rules or regulations against doing this, but I think it's fully possible for a military member to build a thriving business. That might be a digital business, but a thriving business while in service. Have you seen that before?
Oh, for sure. For sure. And from what we understand, and again, we're not part of the DoD or anything, but yes, you can start your own business. And we've worked with some men and women and spouses who have actually started their business while in the military, and it gives them that run rate, right? They've got, 3 squares a day and some housing and insurance and all that kind of stuff. So a fantastic idea, Ryan, is to start your business while you're still in the military. And there's tons of resources out there that are free that soldiers could obtain to get that business started.
Guys, as I mentioned before, the Uprising is now roughly 60 days away. It's going to be held May 3rd through the 6th, 2018, and we have 8 spots, guys, just 8 spots remaining. If you're new to the show or Order of Man, the Uprising, again, is a 3.5-day experience, and we call it an experience for a reason. It's in the mountains of southern Utah. This isn't your typical corporate retreat where you sit down in some stuffy conference room and hear people talk to you or at you for 3 days. This is an intense and an involved experience where you'll team up with other men, you'll compete against other teams, and physical and mental and emotional challenges designed to push you and get you thinking about life differently. I've had a lot of people ask me what all is included in this event, and I don't give them that information. I give you an overview, the 30,000-foot view, but part of the experience is the element of surprise. But I can assure you, it is a life-changing experience. Of the men who have come to these events in the past, I can tell you that their lives were very stagnant, and the 3.5 days that we spent together as a team gave them the jolt they needed to kickstart their relationships and their health and their wealth and just their lives in general. So you need to get signed up quickly if you are interested, because registration is going to be shut down soon. We only have 8 more spots. Guys, you can claim yours at orderofman.com/uprising. orderofman.com/uprising. We hope to see you there. So go ahead and take care of that. But in the meantime, we'll get back to the conversation with Phil. The first thing I wanted to ask as we shift gears here is from a business owner perspective. So there's a lot of business owners who are listening to this who have the potential to hire veterans. And I would be really curious as to what you would say for them in advocating for hiring veterans.
I've got a handful of veterans that work for me, and I can tell you their work ethic, the fact that they show up is just such a game changer. All I do is pretty much tell them what the mission is, what the outcome is. And I know you know this from serving in Iraq for over a year, and they just get it done. So if you're looking to hire somebody who you don't have to, kind of babysit, I got a lot of people I got to babysit on this, on these type of things.
Sure.
Man, these guys just get it done. These guys and girls that I have, on my team, I don't know how they do it. And maybe I should probably find out how they do it, because I could probably learn a lot, but they're just incredible. So if you're looking to hire now, it's got to be the right fit. I don't think a lot of soldiers don't want to come in and work and sit in a cubicle all day.
Yeah, that'd be a hard transition.
But they love working with teams. They love to complete a mission. If you're a business owner that needs help, taking something to the finish line, I'm great at starting things, Ryan. I'm horrible at finishing. I'm a horrible finisher. I'm a kind of a visionary, I guess, but I have the men and women who know how to get it done work for me. So that would be kind of my advice with that, with hiring veterans, would be just make sure you give them the outcome you're looking for, be clear on the mission, and let them just have at it.
I'd be really curious about your viewpoint on our obligation as a country to take care of our veterans. And there's been a lot of debate from VA to, health insurance and housing and all of these other things and hiring veterans. What is your take on the obligations and responsibilities we have as a country to take care of our warriors?
That's a really tough question. I have some veterans that I work with who clearly could have qualified for some type of disability for the number of deployments they did. And they're like, I don't want to take any type of, they consider it, quote, a handout or any type of government help. They signed up, they served their country. They don't want any of that kind of stuff. And then I have other veterans who are like, hey, listen, I deserve what I'm entitled to. And I'm for both of them, right? I mean, I'm a huge patriot, and I think we should go out of our way to help our military. But I also think in any group, there's also a sense of entitlement as well. And this isn't from me talking. This is from hearing some veterans that get frustrated with their fellow soldiers who aren't taking responsibility and feel like this country owes them a job or owes them this. That's a really tough question for me, Ryan, to be honest with you, because in my opinion, I want them to get the best healthcare, the best housing. So I don't know. That's really tough for me. And I probably did not answer your question.
No, I mean, it's good to talk about because this is something that I'm questioning for myself as well. And I think I fall probably somewhere in the middle. I think that there's some certain contractual obligations that we as a country have to our veterans, and we should certainly uphold those types of things. My health care is provided through the VA, and I can see the value in it, but I can also see some horrendous behavior and systems and processes and red tape that has to be jumped through. But then the other side says, yes, I did volunteer to work and to do this job. And am I entitled to anything after that job is over? I can't give you that answer either. And so I'm probably somewhere in between. I just wanted to get your take and your perspective. Sounds like we're actually very similar in that we're somewhere in between, but don't fully know how to answer the question.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's definitely a tough one.
Yeah, and one that I would actually just consider that most of us just think and ponder on a little bit. I think as men, we have an obligation, and I think there's going to be some certain responsibilities that we may have to lead our communities, and potentially those of you who are listening to lead our country. And so I think these are questions that are difficult to answer, but certainly worth considering and thinking about.
Talk about serving your country. I would love to see more veterans get more involved in their communities, whether it's on a volunteer basis, whether it's on a political basis. I've got a guy on my team running for Congress, and he is just frustrated with what's going on and wants to instill leadership, in the country. So for all those listening, I highly encourage you to get involved. That doesn't mean running for office, but it means just getting involved in your community.
Yeah, so important. And I look around, I see one of the things that I talk a lot about is this lack of male leadership in our young men, specifically our young men's lives. And I think we're beginning to see basically the tip of the iceberg on how challenging this is going to be for society in general. And I feel like as men, we have a moral obligation, and I think even more so as veterans, because we've seen other sides of it and we know some difficult things about the reality of life that a lot of people don't see and are sheltered from. And this is a perfect opportunity to talk with our young men and serve our young men and lead our communities in a way that's realistic versus the suits, in the higher ups that don't really have any realistic experience with what it costs to defend this nation.
Yeah, life is difficult as it is. And I think, and again, we talked about this earlier, I think this country is craving leadership, and I think men need to start leading. And I know we're going to get into that more, and sometimes, man, I'm not a good leader, as I said earlier, as a dad, as a father, as a community person. And sometimes I wear these masks, and I'm trying to strip these masks away, Ryan, to be honest with you, because it's tough, man. It's tough.
It is a challenge, definitely. I want to talk about something that is a difficult conversation to have because I personally know somebody who has committed suicide that's been in the military, and I know a lot of people listening have as well. I think this is plague probably is not the right word, but this is something that is a serious problem that needs to be addressed. And I'm curious about your take as to why we're experiencing so much of this, and if you have any ideas on what maybe could be done in the future to address these sorts of things.
I was asked to testify in front of Congress more about the transition, but the suicide thing came up, and it's tragic numbers. It's, the official number is, quote, 22. We've heard it's closer to 54. I know for teenagers, Ryan, it's the second leading cause of death is suicide. And it's difficult. I've never personally thought, hey, today would be a great day to kind of disappear from this planet.
Right.
But I could tell you, man, I've had some dark times where it's been, you just feel super alone. And so I've heard a number of different things that have helped veterans, everything from journaling. And I know you've talked a lot about, journaling, gratitude, to meditation, to acupuncture, to all these different things. But I think I'm going to throw out, and I don't want to talk about your book and your success, but there's a book by a guy by the name of Dr. John Sarno. And he wrote a book called Healing Back Pain and the Divided Mind. And I had first heard about him from listening to Howard Stern and Larry David. As kids, we grow up, and man, I feel bad for my kids, and I'm trying to work through them. We hear from our fathers and our mothers, and we have all this pain stored up. And going through when I was interviewing all of these veterans for the book I wrote, a lot of this stuff came up from childhood of why they wanted to join or why they wanted to be part of something. And so I think working through some of those things could be very helpful. And Dr. Sarno's books talk about these type of wounds that we carry within our body. And again, I don't want to be too woo-woo about this. I'm the least woo-woo guy out there, but there's a ton of truth to that. And so anyone listening who's contemplating that, please, reach out and get help, because it's not a solution to your family, to any of the things going on. I personally know people who served with, I even had moms call me and go, my son died in Iraq, even though he was here. It was the horrors he saw or whatever tragic situation, but he ended up committing suicide here in the States. And so it's a person problem though, right, Ryan? I mean, it's not just veterans. It's people are using that, unfortunately, as a way to kind of end their suffering.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. It's tragic. And I think you guys are doing good work, because my transition from coming back, not transition out of the military necessarily, but transition from Iraq back into civilian life was a challenge in many ways, because I saw what was a very noble mission and a noble purpose and a higher calling on my part to now I have to worry about that I didn't get the right flavor in my mocha frappuccino or whatever. And so this loss of purpose and guidance and direction in my life was a challenge. And I know I didn't have it nearly as difficult as some of these other soldiers and Marines and military members have when they come back. From my perspective, I think finding an outlet for this stuff, if you can find a productive and a healthy outlet, whether that's a hobby, working out, being part of some organization or team or competing with other men. But I think that goes back to your point about finding a tribe and being around other people. I mean, that's such a valuable answer.
Yeah, and I know you run retreats, and part of that is a lot of physical aspects to your retreat, because that's kind of what guys do, right? I mean, we're physical warrior creatures, and it's frustrating. Like you said, it's like you come home and you've served our country, you've been away from their family, and then you hear someone complain about they ordered extra hot and it's not extra hot, and make
right.
it again, and you're like, dude, just come on, right? It's just
wait a couple minutes.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. But I have to say that that's been me at some points in my life because of frustration and resentment and anger. And so dealing with those type of things, and again, I'm such a work in progress and I'm a mess. And if anyone out there can help me, please help me, because
we're working on it, man. We're working on it.
Yeah. But you're right, man. There's nothing better when I felt just like crap and felt depressed and all that stuff, hitting the gym hard and having a good workout, right? Getting physical. I used to do a lot of training in boxing and all those type of things, mixed martial arts. there's nothing like just rolling around with somebody and just getting your butt kicked. I mean, there's something to that physical aspect. So I encourage everyone to keep that. And again, in the Army, you're paid to work out. It's called PT, and when you get out, there's no one paying you to work out anymore. So keep that physical aspect up. And I know you're a big proponent of that.
Absolutely. I mean, even in Iraq, we had a gym, and I had a buddy that him and I would go work out every single day. And there was just a release that came from that.
Yeah.
We're bumping up against time here, man. But I do want to tell you, man, I just think you're doing great work. I wouldn't be part of your organization if I didn't believe that you guys were doing noble work and something that I think we as a society absolutely need. So I've got to tell you, I appreciate you from that standpoint. As we wind down, though, I do want to ask you a couple additional questions. And the first one is, what does it mean to be a man?
I think my motto has been show 'em. And that's been to my family. Instead of telling them that I'm going to change and telling them I'm going to be more patient and be a better listener, I'm showing them. And I'm not even saying anything. So I think, in my opinion, and you need to be patient, is just show people who you are and be your authentic self.
I love that, man, because obviously I see that in you. So many people that are just willing to talk a big game. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and look how great I am. And at the end of the day, you look at the fruits of their labor and it's just non-existent. That's not the case with you, man. Again, I'm excited about your organization. I'm honored actually to be a small part of it. And I know you're doing great things. I'm excited for our military members and the help in transitioning they can get from what you guys are doing. So I appreciate that from you. How do we connect with you? How do we learn more and tap into the resources you guys have available?
Everything we offer is free. And it's americandream.org. So you can just jump on there, put in your first name and your email, and you've got some tremendous resources. I don't know when we're launching this podcast, but we've totally redesigned the online program. And actually, I wanted to ask you, and I guess I'll just put you on the spot. I would love for you to shoot a video or two and just kind of share your story and what you're doing over there with Order of Man.
Yeah, of course. I'd be honored. I'll definitely put that together. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Well, good, Phil. Well, again, I appreciate you. I appreciate our time. I know we're getting together in a couple of weeks here with your family and my family. I'm looking forward to that and just honored to be on this journey with you. And again, a small part of it. You're doing great things, and I can't wait to see where this thing goes. So thanks for taking some time with us today.
Hey, thank you, Ryan. And congratulations on the success of your book as well.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Phil Randazzo. He is the founder of American Dream U, and as we talked about in the interview and before we got started, this is an organization committed to helping transition our nation's warriors, our veterans, from military life into civilian life. I am part of the organization, so I know a little bit more about the inner workings and how things go behind the scenes, and I can tell you that Phil and his team are an amazing, amazing group of individuals striving to do some incredible work. So if you found value from this episode, if you want to learn more about what Phil is doing, please go check out American Dream U, and that's U as in the letter U.org. You can check us out there, and then leave us a message on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, wherever you are. Let us know what you thought of the show. Share this with a military member. More military members need to hear this message. And I think this is a really good way to kickstart that. So share this episode if you would. In the meantime, guys, the band of brothers that I was talking about earlier, the Iron Council, that's our digital band of brothers. It's amazing what experiences these guys are having and the transformations that they're having in their lives as well. So if you feel like you want something more, you need something more, you can't quite put your finger on it, you need a plan or a frame of reference for growing in your life as a man, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. And then if you want to get out into the mountains with me and 27 other individuals, the mountains of southern Utah, and have an event and experience unlike any other, 3.5 days, May 3rd through the 6th, 2018, join me at the Uprising. It's at orderofman.com/uprising. I hope to see you in the Iron Council. I hope to see you at the Uprising, and I hope to see you next week. But until then, guys, take action and become the man you are meant to be.
Thank you for listening to the Order of Man podcast. If you're ready to take charge of your life and be more of the man you were meant to be, we invite you to join the Order at orderofman.com.